Hi, fifth graders. Today we will be reading chapter 8 of Pillage by Obert Sky. Excerpt from section 4 of The Green Got Not as recorded by Daniel Phillips. With his father gone, Bruno had nothing. His heart was dark with sorrow and filled with hatred for all that had been taken from him and his family. Alone with no possessions, Bruno began to concentrate on farming. With the Pillage gift, his crops grew fast and strong, even among the rocks. Soon he had a small, thriving farm and a tiny home. Every night he would take out the cursed stone and hold it, letting it glow in his hands. The rock reminded him of the unsatisfied vengeance and anger he held in his heart. Chapter 8. I Started Something. Dinner was fantastic. I had never before licked my plate clean. Twice. Wayne still hadn't brought me a TV, but she did bring me a dictionary. I was surprised to see just how many words I had been previously unaware of. After looking at the dictionary, I spent some time reading and trying to understand my mother's journal. I counted the number of times she mentioned me directly, 27, and the number of times she mentioned my father, 0. Wayne had also been kind enough to bring me a picture of my uncle. She knew I was anxious to meet him and thought a picture of him would help prepare me. I held the picture next to the one I had of my mother. There was no question they were related. They both had the same nose, freckles under their eyes, and a milder version of my smile. I set the pictures down and sprawled out on my bed. The house whistled and purred as the evening wind snaked through the walls. I was happy I had survived my first day at school, but there was another one coming tomorrow. My mind kept replaying the moment Wyatt and his friends had been lifted up by the ivy. It made so little sense that after a few minutes of thinking about it, I almost convinced myself that it had never actually happened. I must have seen things wrong, I reasoned. But then I remembered the shrub I had seen change last night and the walled section of the garden behind the manor. I fell asleep thinking that perhaps everything I had experienced was just a dream and that in a few minutes I would wake up, tell my mother about it, and that would be that. 4 hours later, I woke to the sound of wind pounding against my window. Someone had turned off my light. I figured Miley or Wayne had come by to collect my dishes and found me sleeping. I stood up and the wood floor moaned like a sick cow. I reached for the light switch, but when I flipped it, nothing happened. The wind was relentless. The door to my bedroom popped open, a steady stream of air slipped through. I looked into the hall and saw nothing but darkness. I was ready to close my door and pretend everything was going to be okay when I saw a small hint of light coming from where the stairs were. "Wayne?" I whispered. "Miley?" Unless one of them spoke, "Wind," they didn't reply. "Thomas?" I walked down the hall to where the stairs began their descent. The little bit of light was almost unnoticeable. I thought maybe I had been seeing things in the dark, but then at the bottom of the stairs a dull flash of light flickered. "Hello?" I called down. I took the stairs carefully, wishing I had a stick or something to defend myself with. "Who's there?" It was pitch black at the bottom of the stairs with no sign of the strange light. I could feel streams of wind blowing around my ankles and past the top of my head. At the far end of the main floor's long hall, a pinpoint of weak light glimmered, dancing and winking in the darkness. I was no scientist, but even I knew light wasn't supposed to disappear and then reappear further away. There was an uneasy chattering in the air, like the wind was trying to warn me of something. As usual, I ignored any voice of reason and kept my eyes on the light. I followed the minuscule trace of light to the first floor. I was in the hall leading to the kitchens. I suspected that Miley and Wayne were in bed. Thomas, on the other hand, made it clear he was sleeping by snoring loud enough that I could hear it. Though I had been on this floor more than any other, I still had probably only explored a fourth of it. I walked away from the staff quarters to the other half of the manor. The wind pulsated more than it blew. I could feel the pressure of the windows flexing in and out. My heart raised a notch in my throat with each step I took. The wind's pulsation beat thoughts into my head. I could remember every horror movie I had ever seen. I felt like the wide assortment of villains in those movies were now hiding somewhere on this floor, waiting to attack me. I'm living this, I whispered to myself, still not completely believing my life at the moment. Mom, if there is danger down here, let me know. I figured she hadn't given me much advice while she was alive, but maybe in death, with a little more insight and time, she might reach out and steer me the right way. That didn't appear to be the case. I could hear the wind chattering in the darkness, and like the sort of idiot I would have scolded for going down the dark hall, I walked right down the dark hall. I would have kept walking if it had not been for a wall stopping my progress. I ran right into it, hitting my nose hard enough for me to swear. Sorry, Mom, I said, just in case she was listening. I felt along the wall, looking for another direction to walk. There wasn't any. I had walked into a dead end where there was a door with a locked handle. A faint light slipped out from under the door and briefly danced across my toes. Every hair on my neck stood up and then wilted. I put my ear to the door, hoping to hear someone or something moving around on the other side. I could only hear the wind muttering and moaning. I rattled the locked knob, trying to pop the door open. It was no use. I let go of the knob and watched the light along the bottom of the door fade to black. I would have just turned around, adding tonight's mystery to the growing list of oddities King's plot was providing, but then I heard something fiddling with the lock on the other side of the door. I stepped back. The unexpected sound, so surprising and unsettling, I could barely keep my knees working. It sounded like tiny hands nervously rattling the lock as the wind continued to mutter. There was a soft, crisp click, and then nothing. Everything in me was telling me to just walk away. Well, not everything, because despite the signals my brain was sending to my feet to move away, the signal my hands were receiving was stronger. I could feel my fingers groping for the doorknob. I turned the handle again, and this time the door pushed open. I tried to control my breathing, but my throat began doing weird things with the air it was taking in. I couldn't hear anything but my breath. I gently pushed the door, and it swung open all the way, the hinges squeaking lightly as the door came to rest against the wall. I couldn't see anything. "Who's there?" I asked. My breathing was so loud I felt certain everyone within a 10-mile radius could hear me. "Someone's there. I heard you," I whispered. The thin line of light shimmered from under the baseboard on the far wall. As much as I wanted to, I couldn't turn back. I walked across the room. The light was coming from somewhere behind the wall. I kicked at the baseboard and felt my toes push into a soft spot on the wall. Surprised, I pulled my foot away and saw I'd created a small hole. I kicked again, creating a slightly bigger hole. Light as dull as wet newspaper dripped out slowly. I dropped onto my knees and then down onto my stomach so I could peer through the hole. A large earthen tunnel sloped downward. At the bottom of the dirt tunnel, there was a bend. Whatever was causing the light was around that turn. I lay on the floor, gazing into the dimly lit hole. I stuck my fingers in and pulled at the wall. The opening tore easily, creating a tear twice the size of the original hole. The tunnel was larger than I'd thought. I was about to tear the hole wide open when I saw a shadow moving far down in the hole, blocking the light. I pushed onto my elbows and then my knees in one frantic jump. As I got onto my feet, the wind began to chatter even stronger. It was so dark, and even though the night was cool, I felt sweat gathering all over my body. I ran back across the room. I could barely see the outline of the room's door. There was a key lodged in the keyhole on the inside. I grabbed it and locked the door behind me as quickly as I could. I stood with my back against the closed door, trying to catch my breath. I heard someone twisting the knob again and decided I had rested long enough. I ran down the hall and back up the stairs to the main floor. It was dark, but my fear gave me a keen sense of direction. I found the stairs leading to the third floor and sprinted to my room, certain that someone or something was right behind me. I slammed my door shut and reached for the light switch. The electricity was working again. I turned the latch, bolting the door closed, and looked around the room to make sure I really was alone. It was just me and the jittery wind. I double-checked the lock on my door and then circled my bedroom, kicking at the baseboards to make sure I didn't have any weak walls. Everything was solid. I couldn't decide if I should scream or curl up in a ball and cry. I didn't like this house. I didn't want to be here. I wanted to be in a messy apartment making my mother dinner. I wanted to be thinking of ways to bother my classmates or scrounging for money in my mom's purse to buy a movie ticket. The wind laughed shrilly at me. I put my hands over my ears and lay back on my bed. I stayed awake the rest of the night, watching the clock and wondering how I was ever going to live here. Okay, my friends, we're going to stop there, and tomorrow we will read chapter 9.